This is the Anxiety Bites podcast, and I am your host, Jen Kirkman. Welcome to another episode of Anxiety Bites. I am your host, Jen Kirkman. Today's episode, my guest is you. This is a solo episode where only I will be speaking, and that sounded aggressive, didn't it? Only I will be speaking. This is a solo episode. I don't have a guest to interview. We'll be doing these listener email episodes, maybe once a month, just to find out how you all are doing. If you have any questions, if you want to share any recovery tips of your own. And I have a ton of great emails from you all, and we'll get to just a few of them today. But I want to thank everyone who's been listening to the podcast and giving feedback. I will ask you again if you could rate this podcast 5 stars and give it a review. It doesn't have to be anything long. It could be 2 sentences. I had anxiety, and this really helps me, it's simple as that. Or this is an easy listen, and I find it very refreshing. Whatever you want to put. And you can do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Both of those platforms allow you to give reviews. And trust me, it really helps. If every single person who listened to that podcast did it, it would be climbing up the charts. It's all algorithms, people. And then, of course, if you want to send an email to the show about, if you want to give us some of your anxiety recovery tips, or you want to ask a question, anxietybitesweekly@gmail.com. So before we start, something in my life is I was diagnosed with ADHD maybe about, probably around 2008. And, I went to my psychiatrist who I'd been seeing for a while and took the test and scored very well. I'm very ADHD, but it's one of those things that I didn't have a lot of understanding of. Well, first of all, most ADHD studies, I think it's starting to change now, but have been done in men. And women have very different symptoms of ADHD. Women in perimenopause, which I am, their symptoms change again. And so there are so many little aspects of my anxiety disorder and personality that fall under the umbrella of ADHD. And there are so many emotional regulations that I lacked or needed better tools with, or even to apply tools. And I didn't quite understand that until I understood this was part of my anxiety disorder, specifically under the smaller umbrella of ADHD. This wasn't necessarily a psychological disorder in the sense that it's really hard to parse out, because obviously I'm not an expert. I'm just a person with these things. But oftentimes there were reactions I would have, whether I would actually react verbally to something or get so overwhelmed that I would fall asleep. I don't mean in a like literally falling asleep on the spot. But, if my day gets too overwhelming and I'm not somewhere like at work, but I'm, it's sort of a work on my own projects day, and there are deadlines and there are consequences. There are times when I have become so overwhelmed that I actually physically get exhausted and can honestly lay down and fall asleep, even if I've had 3 cups of coffee. And I will choose to do that as a self-soothing instead of something else. And then I will wake up with less time to do what I needed to do, and it almost hitting like now a mild depression feeling. But these things would ping pong, and they would happen so fast. And it was always very confusing because it would only happen sometimes. It didn't meet the qualifications for depression. And all of these are symptoms of ADHD. And they're not only symptoms, but they are coping mechanisms that don't work and then cause further anxiety. So there are many things that I'm still learning about my diagnosis. And I sort of let it go. When I first got diagnosed, I didn't want to take a medication for it. I just thought, oh, well, that explains some things. And that was good enough for me at the time. And now I do find that if I don't use cognitive tools and medication as needed for it, it's not a day that I can sort of wrap my arms around and not only get things done, but sort of survive emotionally. And there are little things that I've read about ADHD where I think, oh, oh, that's fun. Like yeah, I relate to that. It's almost the same feeling you get if you read your horoscope or something. But I was just reading an article about home decorating. I mean, I had no idea this was going to turn into an article about ADHD, but it's from a UK website called stylist.co.uk. And it was about the new decorating phenomenon called cluttercore, having a maximalist aesthetic rather than a minimalist. And I try to have a minimalist aesthetic. I'm not a hoarder. I'm a neat freak. Everything is in its place. Everything is clean. But I like to have things. I like textures in my, like pillows that are velvety or furry, things that I can touch that make me happy, things that produce this kind of mood and things that make me feel like everything makes sense. I like to have things like out and about and displayed and organized. Oh, if I need that, that's over here, that kind of thing. But I don't think anyone would say my place looks cluttered, but it's definitely lived in. And, I live in both New York and LA. And so my little apartment I have in Brooklyn is very lived in for someone who just moved in 3 months ago. But that's how I like it. And I like patterns. I have clashing wallpaper patterns and way too many pillows than I need on my couch. But, you have to move them before you get on. Same with my bed. I mean, but I just like things. And so I'm reading this article and this woman is writing, I love bright clashing colors. Anything goes from stripes with leopard print to pink with red. My space may be limited, but no element of my flat is boring. I have vivid prints, walls of eye-popping contrasting colors, bundles of houseplants, trinkets in every corner. But it wasn't until I was diagnosed with ADHD at 23 that I finally understood why I was obsessed with excess. ADHD impacts the parts of the brain that help us plan, focus on, and execute tasks. It's thought that ADHD brains have different, often lower levels of dopamine, which is the quick-acting feel-good hormone and neurotransmitter that provides instantaneous stimulation. My ADHD diagnosis changed my life. For years, I struggled with time management, mental hyperactivity, and depressive episodes. I also wrestled with object permanence. Now, this was new to me when I read this article. It says the ability to understand that objects exist when they are out of sight, which means, as she says, I like to put every item I hold dear out on display so I can truly cherish it. Now, I have that to a point. I'm not going to put my plates out on the counter, but I have the same thing where every once in a while, I'm not joking, I will open a drawer or open a cabinet just to look and say, oh, these things that I treasure but use regularly, but need to keep them out, are here. I never really understood what that was. Thought maybe I was a little nuts. And then, of course, within reason, if it's tastefully done, I love as many things out as possible. A growing community of women with ADHD have been showing off their colorful rooms packed full of objects on TikTok using the hashtag cluttercore to explain how they are intrinsically drawn to excessive interior design. Cluttercore, which has over 33 million views on TikTok, is maximalism for the 21st century. The antithesis of minimalism, the aesthetic celebrates stuff and is all about bringing together objects in a chaotic but organized way so your home truly reflects you. It's an aesthetic that operates on a more is more ethos. It's a borderline excessive approach to interior design, platforming abundance through bright colors, busy patterns, and heavy decoration. It doesn't mean the objects become less meaningful because they are displayed. Instead, each object displayed is displayed because it is meaningful. Women with ADHD have taken to TikTok to explain how cluttercore feels like another vivid personality trait of ADHD. Many women are giving ADHD-friendly tips like incorporating interior accessories with reflective surfaces to increase object permanence and dopamine, or using storage with glass doors so important objects are always visible. One woman named Betty, a lifestyle blogger based in Scotland who has ADHD, says the TikTok cluttercore community has given her self-confidence and meaning. Each room in my flat has a different theme. Oh my God, I have the same thing. And I collect things that give me joy. My living room is green and I find that so grounding. My office is orange and I can't help but feel happy and productive. It's so funny because, I think the deepest down part of my anxiety disorder over the years was this just low hum of low self-esteem. And I think I've really eradicated that. My self-love but mixed with humility is off the charts. It's not a bombastic narcissistic self-love. It's just truly being at peace with me and not thinking there's anything wrong with me. But I do notice in little ways that my brain will still tell me I'm wrong instead of, hey, maybe you need to do this and maybe it's okay to do this. And I know it sounds silly, but sometimes little things like this, like reading an article about home decor, will open up another pathway in my brain where I realize, oh, I've been low-key saying horrible things to myself. So when I moved into my place in Brooklyn, I'm here for a job and I might end up making the move permanently back to the East Coast. But I thought, I'm going to keep this place minimalist. Did I want to? No. But I thought, well, I don't need all these pillows and candles and, books. Like it's just going to be minimal. And I literally cannot tell you why I thought that. There was no practical reason. I can find accessories that I like very cheaply. I'm not an expensive stuff person. It was just, I felt like I should. I don't know. I mean, I guess someone with anxiety might be attracted to the notion of, well, you know what, maybe I should keep things minimal. As someone with anxiety and ADHD and all the things, with my thoughts constantly popping off like popcorn in a microwave bag, sometimes I do want to keep it simple. But it's interesting. I want to keep my life simple. I don't want to have drama and gossip. I don't want to have unfinished business in terms of, do I need to look at the way I handle this and, unfinished business of my own behaviors. So I'm in therapy. I want to keep my life simple in that I try to stick to a schedule. I get up early. I have some routines, that kind of thing. Being happy, just sitting and reading a book can give me the same excitement as maybe getting on a plane and traveling somewhere. But it doesn't translate to everything in my life. I don't have to keep the way I dress or my apartment simple if I don't want to, if it doesn't make me happy. I mean, I'm the one that has to live in here. I'm not doing a photo shoot for Minimalist magazine. I live here. I come home from work and get off the subway and, off the gritty realities of the world. And I come home to some pink velvet pillows that there are way too many of. That, I need that. I like it. And this notion of, I need that. Part of me thought, what are you, materialistic? And it's like, no, you're not materialistic, Jen. It's a $10 pillow from Cost Plus World Market. I frame everything in my life around my anxiety. Oh, is this because of my anxiety? What do I need to do to take care of myself? And every once in a while, something slips through the cracks. I don't see it as being related to anything in my brain, and I will judge myself for it. And so now I'm thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe this does have something to do with my ADHD. Maybe my brain is wired to look for dopamine hits anywhere I can get them. And I think making where I live really aesthetically pleasing is a way better dopamine hit than having a drink, going down some rabbit hole on the internet that's never going to fill your soul, except unless I guess now my new obsession will be cluttercore on TikTok. But I just thought that was kind of fun. And I've been really wanting to do an ADHD episode, and I'd like to do a few of them because there are so many aspects to it. It's so misunderstood. I do want to talk about ADHD in women with going through menopause. And of course, I want to talk about just ADHD in general for all genders and all, phases of life and some of the misconceptions about it and blah, blah, blah. So those will be coming. I'm just full disclosure, because I am this project Anxiety Bites, although it means the world to me, it's not my full-time job. And so unfortunately, there are only certain days of the week and hours of the day that I can record episodes and have a guest. And that doesn't always work out with the guests that I want and that are able to do it. Doesn't always work out with our schedules. So we will have an ADHD episode, but I thought I would just share that with you because it's on my mind. I read this article. I thought it was kind of cool. But if you relate at all, please do send me an email to anxietybites@gmail.com. And now let's get into this episode where, again, you are my guest. Here are the listener emails. Jen, A topic you have touched upon in Anxiety Bites that I'd be interested in hearing you explore more is anxiety in teenagers. I have a nearly 16-year-old daughter who experiences anxiety when she gets overwhelmed by friendship issues and schoolwork and in her new after-school casual job, amongst other things. This presents as her not being able to get out of negative thought spirals, crying, not being able to get to sleep. I've tried suggesting things I would do myself in these situations, like taking a bath, listening to a meditation, going for a walk, talking to a friend or a teacher or one of those free counseling lines, but she's quite resistant to any of these ideas. She's seen her school's well-being counselor a few times, but didn't find it all that helpful. I've also given her your big PDF for dealing with anxiety. Eventually, the problem passes and she's okay until next time. Do you have any suggestions on what might assist her? I thought you may have reflections on your anxiety as a teenager and what would have helped you then as compared to what helps adults. Or do you think the ways of addressing anxiety are much the same as for teens and adults? I just find with my daughter, she can be resistant to anything I suggest and perhaps lacks the maturity to self-regulate her emotions. My memory of teen years does not include many memories of anxiety. And then this reader goes into discussing a panic attack that she did once have. I related this story to my daughter with the main learning being that sometimes you just have to sit with discomfort and it will pass and you may come out the better for it. But mine is quite a specific example, and I feel quite lucky it worked out as it did. As a Gen X like you, I haven't had to face some of the pressures she does, like toxicity online at her age. She's also lost grandparents and teachers she was close to at an early age, whereas I didn't experience the loss of anyone I was close to until I was 19. I've heard you speak on Anxiety Bites about the loss of your grandfather at 8 and how that affected you when you look back in hindsight. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts about this. Thanks, Jane. Hey, Jane, thanks for writing in. Well, I do have some ideas, but again, I don't have a teenager and I'm not a professional. But just from what I'm learning, I think your question, do you think the ways of addressing anxiety are much the same for teens as for adults? I do. I think the basic fixes for anxiety are cognitive behavior therapy, which will help with her negative thought spirals, regulating emotions, regulating sleep, diet, exercise. I don't mean go on a diet, but I mean, not even cutting out certain foods, but just knowing how certain foods affect you and understanding, where maybe on a day where you're going to be super stressed, you might have some anxiety because you're going to be in a situation that scares you, whether it's a tall building or an exam. Maybe that's the day you don't have your normal 2 cups of coffee that you would have in a more relaxed setting. If you have coffee on your day off and you like to have 2-3 cups and it doesn't affect you, great, but coffee does imitate feelings of anxiety. And so it may bring on an anxiety attack, for example, if you're about to do something stressful. So that's what I mean by diet, is just knowing what certain foods do to you and maybe not having them on the days that you can anticipate there will be some stress. So things like that, breathing and meditating, all the things, everything that helps anyone at age 12 will help someone at age 32. But the problem is she's not an adult. And she doesn't have a lot of experience doing something, seeing the result, and being able to look back on it as a memory and say, when I did that, that helped. When I did that, that didn't help. So she's still building up her past, right? She doesn't have a big past. She's only 16. Half of her life, she probably doesn't even remember. And she probably wasn't as full-blown in this, what sounds like an anxiety disorder, when she was, maybe 12 and under. So she doesn't have a big history behind her, So unfortunately, she's probably just going to have to live doing some disordered thinking and some disordered behaviors. And one day she will look back and say, well, that didn't help. But when I did this, it did help. So it's more about maybe trying to look at it that way, that it's going to be very hard. I mean, I know that teenagers are resistant because it's like, you're their mom. They don't want to listen to their mom. And, maybe they're stubborn. Maybe it's hormones. But as I'm looking back on my life, I'm wondering if the stubbornness and the not listening is really because it's not a tool we're used to. Like, we're not used to taking advice from people because we don't believe that they know what they're talking about because we don't have any proof. We don't care if someone says, this worked for me. Well, I'm not you. They're still developing. And it may seem narcissistic and it may seem stubborn, but there's that thing. I don't know what you would call it. And again, I'm no psychiatrist here, but this is just my opinion, the opinion of a podcaster. But I'm starting to reframe how I look at the stubbornness of teenagers, the ones I see out in the world, and the one I was myself, which is like, yeah, why would you believe someone who's not exactly where you are? That's why with some people, they have a better success rate of getting sober if they go somewhere like AA, where it's not a doctor who never had a drinking problem telling them this is what you should do, but instead they're with other people who are like, oh, I've been there. I blacked out and crashed my car and lost everything too. You want to hear from that. Well, what did you do? You want to hear from that person. So it's probably going to be hard. So I would think, however you do this is coming from that place of compassion, not that you don't have any already, obviously, where she doesn't have a reason to take anyone's advice because everything is so new to her that this still may feel deep down like it's a her problem and not a problem that there's answers for, which is the most frustrating part of talking to younger people. Again, I'm looking back on people trying to talk to me. And so the problem, though, is that whatever she's doing now that helps her feel fine, that isn't meditating and, all the good stuff, she is developing some probably disordered thinking, disordered habits, which is fine. I mean, it's not like the end of the world, but she'll want to realize that this is going to really suck when you're, the things that you mentioned she's having trouble with sound like life, right? Friendships, schoolwork, after school job. Well, she's going to have friendships. She's going to have work, as an adult as well. And so if she's bringing whatever things, she's doing something to soothe herself, right? It may not be meditation, taking a bath, going to therapy, but there's some thought pattern she does when she's stuck in negative spiraling. She might be actually making it worse by doing more of it. She might be doing something that's exacerbating her not being able to sleep. I don't know. In a weird way, even though these things don't end up producing great results, they're what she knows how to do. And so she's doing her best right now. And that's what she's doing to self-soothe. So if she gets used to these patterns, again, even if they don't actually help, that's the crux of anxiety. It makes no sense. For me, worrying about flying and panicking helped me fly because I didn't know any other tools. But I was convinced those things kept me safe. And when I made the switch from, I can't really keep myself safe except for the basics, look both ways before crossing the street, don't do drugs. I made the shift with my thoughts now are going to help keep me sane. I'm going from trying to be safe to trying to be sane because safe is a illusion, mostly. If a bus is going to fall out of the sky and hit me, it's going to hit me. But at least I can be sane up until the moment it happens. Because if a bus never hits me, man, did I waste my life walking around worrying that a bus is going to fall out of the sky and hit me. So my point is, whatever disordered little behavior she's doing, these are becoming habits. And she'll probably end up doing them in her 20s, where it's going to suck even more to not live in your mom's house and have all this support. It's going to suck more. So I don't know. I don't know if this is something that is appropriate to say to a teenager. I don't know if I would be making it worse if I said this. So, but I'm just offering you that thought that might be a sort of clinical way to explain to her without scaring her that she's building up some habits right now and she just wants to replace them with better ones. And you might want to really humble yourself and say, I don't relate because I didn't have this, but it's very normal what you do have. And I don't have the tools for you, but I can give you love and support and encouragement. But you need to get the right tools. It's sort of like when you take someone back to school shopping. I mean, do you have a clothing store in your living room? Do you have backpacks and notebooks in your dining room? No, you have to go to the store and get these things. I mean, it really has to be looked at as that simple. So for me, if I were the mom, I would say the most important thing is getting her back into therapy. I don't know about the wellness counselor at school. I mean, I've never had good luck with those people either. but she simply needs some new tools for rethinking. And it can be an empowering thing. Like, there's nothing wrong with you, but hey, I'm your mom and I didn't give you these tools because I didn't know you would need them. And I never had to learn. Sometimes we don't have the ability to learn something until we're really in the shit. So you may have never had the opportunity to be as anxious as your daughter. It could be society. It could be just the way her brain is. Who knows? But the point is, mom doesn't have the tools, right? But a good therapist does. And so your best tool, I think, is to put her in touch with a therapist, cognitive behavior therapy, and really explain it's not about like going deep into the back of your mind and trauma and all that. Really, truly look for a therapist that does CBT, because they will literally, as though you are sending someone to a personal trainer, they will help you build the muscle that helps you stop negative thought spirals. It might even be able to help her get to sleep, and it will help her navigate ways to look at friendship and things like that. And also it might help rule out any other diagnosis. I mean, I don't know, she might have a different kind of psychological disorder. That's quite possible, you know? But I think a lot of acceptance can help too. Like, this is where you're at today because of where you're at today. You're having difficulties with these things. It's normal. It is fixable. And I think that's where self-esteem comes in, which is another really hard thing I assume about getting a teenager to get help. Is I don't know of another time in your life when, even if you're going to end up being someone with great self-esteem, that it's worse is when you're a teenager. And in my unprofessional opinion, but I truly believe, and I will go to the mat with this with any actual doctor who wants to argue me out of it, but I'm not sure they would, is that it takes a certain amount of self-esteem to want to fix something. It takes a certain amount of self-esteem to think that you're worth it. And again, this is so deeply rooted that I don't know if people even know they're thinking it. I certainly didn't know I was thinking it. And it takes a certain amount of self-esteem or wholeness to say, this isn't just me, this is normal. I know that sounds crazy because it sounds like the opposite. Like, somebody who thinks something's only them, isn't that kind of more in the, like, they've got a lot of self-esteem. They think the world revolves around them, but no, not really. In the depression, it can be like, I'm the piece of shit the world revolves around. I don't know if you've heard that expression. And so that kind of, oh my God, it's only me with this problem, that can stop a lot of people from getting help because they don't believe there is help. Or they're afraid to try because what if they try and it doesn't work? So one thing you said that really stuck out to me, which is, again, something I hear every day practically, is eventually the problem passes and she's okay until the next time. So I think the emotional emphasis should be, instead of the sentence, eventually the problem passes and she's okay, ... until the next time. What if the sentence read, every time she has a problem, it passes and she's okay? Does that make sense? So when she puts the work into something, it passes and she's okay. And that, my friend, is the exercise of life. Whether or not you get up and you do your push-ups every day, you may not get your